The first person to tell me I had a second mortgage was the woman handling the first one. I was standing in the kitchen of the little brick house I had spent 6 weeks trying not to love when my loan officer called. The inspection and appraisal were done. My closing was 11 days away, and the seller had a backup offer. "Erin," Dana said, "I need to ask you about a new mortgage inquiry." I pressed my palm against the cool quartz counter. "My what?" There was a professional pause, the kind people use before they decide how carefully to speak. "North Valley Lending pulled your credit 9 days ago," she said. "Underwriting needs to know whether that inquiry turned into new debt or another housing obligation." I looked through the empty kitchen toward the postage stamp backyard and the maple tree by the fence. I had already imagined coffee under it on Saturday mornings, nobody treating my savings or competence like an emergency fund with a pulse. I did not apply for another mortgage. "An inquiry by itself doesn't prove new debt," Dana said, "but underwriting has to reconcile it before closing. Do you recognize North Valley?" "No." "Any refinance, co-borrow application, family property deal?" "No." "Call them directly. If it's unauthorized, get that documented. Until then, final approval may be held." Dana's email showed only what her side could actually see. North Valley Lending, inquiry date 9 days earlier. No property address, no balance. Just a mortgage inquiry I had never requested. I called North Valley before anyone in my family. After 2 transfers and a full identity check, I reached a man named Victor. "There is a residential mortgage application associated with your social security number," he said. I did not submit one. He asked whether I had spoken with their loan officer, signed electronic disclosures, authorized the credit pull, or given anyone permission to apply for me. No to all of it. "I'm placing a hold on the file while we review that. Let me verify you once more before I give you the property address." Then he read it. A townhouse in Oak Park. I knew it before he finished the unit number. My sister Chloe had lived there for almost 3 years. My parents owned it. I sat down on the bottom step of the staircase. How far did this get? "I'm limited in what I can discuss while the file is under review, especially because there is another applicant," Victor said. "I can tell you it is not a funded loan, but an application was opened, a credit report was obtained, and a loan estimate was generated. Whose email is on the application?" "I can't read account contact information back to you. I can tell you the email we have does not match the one you just provided." That was the moment this stopped feeling like a bureau error. Someone had not merely mistyped my social security number. Someone had built a file. I thanked Victor, got the review number, and called my mother. She answered on the second ring. "Hi, honey. How did the appraisal go?" That was the first bad sign. My mother, Marianne Bennett, could remember other people's deadlines better than they could. Birthdays, renewals, dentist appointments, when my father's tires needed rotating, when Chloe's car registration expired. She called it being organized. Growing up, we called it easier than arguing with her. "The appraisal was fine," I said. "Why is there a mortgage application in my name for Chloe's townhouse?" Silence, not confusion. Silence. Then she sighed. "Oh, Erin, I closed my eyes. What did you do?" "Nothing has been done." "That is not what I asked. You're making this sound much worse than it is, Mom. It's just your credit." The sentence landed so strangely that for a second I thought I had misheard her. "What does that mean?" "Chloe is trying to buy the townhouse." "You know that." I did know she had talked about buying it eventually. The townhouse had been my parents' rental property for almost a decade. Chloe moved in after her divorce, originally for 6 months, which had become 3 years because temporary arrangements in my family tended to become permanent when they benefited the person who asked for them. I know she wants to buy it someday. Well, someday came sooner than expected, and that has what to do with my credit. Her numbers are a little short right now. Your father talked to someone. They said if there was a stronger co-borrower, the deal could work. I am not a co-borrower. No one said you were. North Valley has an application with my social security number and another email address. My mother did not answer. Did Dad give them my tax returns? A pause. Your father has your tax information. Of course he did. For years, Dad had prepared our family taxes. He was not an accountant, but he had spent 30 years in corporate finance and took genuine pleasure in spreadsheets. After I graduated college, he had offered to keep doing mine because, in his words, there was no reason to pay someone to type numbers he already understood. Even after I started earning enough to hire my own accountant, I kept letting him do it because it seemed harmless, and because changing the arrangement would have required a conversation I never felt like having. He had returns, W-2s, addresses, employer information, and my social security number. "You used my identity on a mortgage application." "Erin, stop saying it like that." "How should I say it?" "We were helping Chloe see what her options were. With my credit." "Yes, because yours is excellent. That is not an insult." I almost laughed. Did Chloe know? She knows we're trying to make the numbers work. That was not my question. You should talk to her. I will. Please don't upset her before we all sit down. She's been under a lot of stress. I looked back toward the empty kitchen. So have I. You're buying a house, Erin. This has nothing to do with that. My lender just put final approval on hold because of this. That got her attention. What do you mean on hold? I mean I may not close. No, that can't happen. Your father specifically said this wouldn't affect you unless the other loan closed. I stopped breathing for a second. Unless the other loan closed. She hesitated. I just mean nothing is final. You told me you were only seeing what Chloe's options were. We are. Then why are you talking about another closing? Erin, no, tell me exactly what you did. Her voice hardened in the way it always did when she decided the conversation had become inconvenient. We are not doing this over the phone. Come to dinner tomorrow. Your father can explain it properly. I already called North Valley. That silenced her. The file is on hold, I said. I told them I never authorized it. You did what? I told the truth. Erin, you had no reason to make this into a fraud issue before talking to us. You had no reason to make me part of a mortgage before talking to me. We were going to ask you. When? Before anything became binding. I looked around the kitchen I might lose because they had decided a hard inquiry, and an application somehow did not count as consequences. It already affected me. She went quiet again. That silence told me more than anything else she had said. I froze all 3 credit reports from my phone in the parking lot. I changed passwords on every financial account I could think of. I emailed Dad telling him, in writing, that he no longer had permission to prepare my taxes or retain copies of my current financial documents. He called 3 minutes later. I let it ring. Then Chloe called. I answered. What did you do? She asked. Not hello, not are you okay, what did you do? I closed my eyes. I reported a mortgage application I didn't authorize. You froze it? I told the lender the truth. Erin, they stopped everything. Everything I never agreed to? You knew I was trying to buy the townhouse. I knew you wanted to buy it. Same difference. No, it really isn't. She exhaled hard into the phone. Mom said you were willing to help. What exactly did Mom say I had agreed to? That you'd help with financing if it came down to that. I stood beside my car with traffic hissing past on the wet street. I said the opposite. When? At Christmas. At the dining table. You asked whether I would ever co-sign something for family and I said no. That was hypothetical. It was a direct question. You said you wouldn't co-sign for somebody who couldn't afford the payment. I can afford the payment. The fact that she remembered the sentence that precisely made my stomach turn. So you did know I had not agreed. I knew you had concerns. That is not the same thing. Mom and Dad said it would be temporary. How temporary? Until I refinanced. When? When my income stabilizes. That is not a date. Can you stop talking to me like I'm stupid? I'm not. I'm asking why my name is on a mortgage application. Because yours is the only credit profile strong enough to get the loan where it needs to be. The words came out too smoothly, I caught them. Where did it need to be? She did not answer. Chloe, I have to go. Did you give them my pre-approval information? Silence. Then you posted the picture of the folder in the family chat. I remembered that. A stupid little celebration after Dana had emailed my pre-approval. I had taken a photo of the front page with the lender's logo and the word pre-approved across the top. I had covered the account number with my thumb, but the approval amount was visible. $400,000. My mother had sent 3 house emojis. Chloe had written, must be nice to have a lender love you. At the time I had laughed. Now I did not. That wasn't permission. I didn't say it was. Did you tell Mom and Dad I could qualify for your place? I said your numbers were strong. That is not what I asked. I have to go, Erin. She hung up. I sat in my car for another 10 minutes before I trusted myself to drive. The next morning, Dana called to tell me underwriting needed a written explanation and proof that the second application was unauthorized and on hold. How bad is this for my closing? I asked. I don't know yet. Can we still make the date? Maybe. Maybe is a word that feels harmless until it is attached to a house you have already paid to inspect. My agent, Nicole, called an hour later. The seller is asking whether there's a financing issue. There is a paperwork issue. Can it be resolved by closing? I'm trying. She was quiet. I need to tell you they do have a backup offer. They like your offer, but if we need a significant extension, I can't guarantee they'll agree. I understand. After we hung up, I opened the kitchen photo from the listing. White cabinets, small window over the sink, maple tree visible through the glass. Then I closed it. The next afternoon, Nicole met me at the house because the seller had agreed to let us bring in a contractor for one last estimate on the aging water heater. It was not something I technically needed to do. I had already negotiated a credit. But I had become the kind of almost homeowner who wanted to know what every future problem would cost before it became mine. Nicole was in the basement with the contractor when my mother called. I stepped into the empty living room to answer. Sunlight came through the front windows in long rectangles across the hardwood. I had been planning to put a reading chair in one of them. Your father says the lender can still make Chloe's loan work, Mom said. I told you I'm not doing it. I know what you said. I'm telling you there may be a timing solution. I turned toward the staircase. What timing solution? If your purchase is confusing the underwriting, could you close yours after Chloe? For a moment, I genuinely did not understand the question. You want me to delay buying my house so your unauthorized mortgage application works better? No. Don't say it that way. How should I say it? We are trying to separate the transactions. My transaction already existed, and this seller can probably wait a week or two. You don't know that. Most sellers would rather wait than start over. I looked around the living room. There were little blue pieces of painter's tape on the wall from the inspection. The seller had left one beside a patched crack near the front window. I had stared at that crack for 10 minutes during inspection, worried it meant foundation movement until the inspector explained it was cosmetic. I had worried about everything I was supposed to worry about: roof age, sewer line, property tax history, insurance, emergency savings. I had not known I also needed to plan for my parents opening a second mortgage file with my identity. Mom, the seller has a backup offer. They always say that. No, they actually do. Silence. Then she said, well, if it came down to it, you can find another house. The sentence was quiet, almost compassionate. That made it worse. And Chloe can't, I asked. She's been in that townhouse for 3 years. It's her home. I looked down at the floorboards under my shoes. I had owned nothing in this room. Not the walls, not the windows, not even the right to be angry if the seller chose somebody else. But until that moment, everyone in my family had spoken about my purchase like it was real. Mom had asked about paint colors. Dad had wanted to see the inspection report. Chloe had sent me couch links. Now that her transaction needed mine to bend, my house had become replaceable. You just answered a question I didn't know I had, I said. What does that mean? It means you already decided whose home counts more. That is not fair. No, it isn't. I ended the call before she could tell me I had misunderstood her. Nicole came up from the basement a minute later. You okay? I looked around the room once more. I don't know yet. She did not ask for details. She just handed me the contractor's estimate and said, then don't make any decisions in this room because you're afraid of losing it. I folded the estimate and slid it into my pre-approval folder. That was the first time I admitted to myself that fear of losing this house could become exactly the leverage my family needed. That evening, I drove to Chloe's townhouse instead of my parents' house. I had been there dozens of times. Christmas brunch, birthday dinners before Chloe's divorce, Sunday meals when Mom decided nobody was seeing each other enough. The place had always felt borrowed, even after Chloe painted the living room pale green and replaced the builder-grade light fixtures. My parents still called it the Oak Park property. Chloe called it home. When I walked in, there were paint samples spread across the kitchen counter. Chloe had written bedroom beside one blue square and office beside a warm grey one. Next to them sat a white envelope with a gold house printed on the front. Congratulations, homeowner. My mother's handwriting was inside. I almost admired the confidence. Dad was standing at the sink. Mom was arranging takeout containers. Chloe sat at the table with her arms crossed. You could have called before putting a fraud hold on everything, Dad said. I did call. I called the lender because my name was on a mortgage I didn't authorize. It is not a mortgage yet, he said. Great. Then stopping it should not be a problem. His jaw tightened. Mom gestured at the chair across from Chloe. Sit down, please. Everybody is upset and nothing gets solved when people are emotional. I stayed standing. Show me the paperwork. Dad frowned. What paperwork? The application with my name on it. It's under review now. You have copies. He glanced at Mom. That was enough. Show me. Chloe pushed a folder across the table. I printed what the broker sent, she said. The first page was a loan estimate. Under applicants, I saw Chloe's name. Then mine. The property address beneath the names was the townhouse where I was standing. For a few seconds, nobody spoke. I could hear the refrigerator motor turn on. I could smell the sesame oil from the takeout containers Mom had opened, as if dinner might somehow make this normal. I tapped my finger once against my name. Whose house is this supposed to be? Chloe stared at me. Hers, Mom said. Then why is the bank calling the debt mine? Dad leaned forward. You are not buying her house. You are helping her qualify. That sentence does not mean anything. It means Chloe is responsible for the payments. My name is on the loan, temporarily. Debt does not know what temporary means. Mom rubbed her forehead. Erin, please. It's just your credit. There it was again. Just your credit. Like credit lived in a drawer somewhere, separate from the person who spent 15 years building it. Who submitted this? I asked. Dad lifted one shoulder. The broker did. Who gave the broker my social security number? I had it. My tax returns? I had them. My employer information? It's on your return. My income? Same answer. Who gave him an email address that was not mine? His face changed, only slightly, but I saw it. Mom stepped in. We created a separate email so you wouldn't get bombarded with automated messages before we had something concrete to show you. I stared at her. You created an email for a mortgage file using my identity? It was for the file. And when North Valley sent the credit authorization link there? Nobody answered. That silence was answer enough. I looked at Chloe. She looked away. That hurt more than I expected. Not because I believed she was innocent anymore. Because she had already chosen a side and was still pretending there had never been a choice. Did you know about the email? I knew Dad was handling documents. That's not what I asked. Why are you doing this? She snapped. You're acting like we stole your house. No, you're using my ability to buy one. You can still buy your house. My underwriting is paused. Her expression flickered. Mom spoke quickly. That is exactly why we all need to calm down. Your father can call the broker tomorrow. Get this straightened out, and then your lender can move forward. How? We tell them the application is being withdrawn. Dad cleared his throat. We don't need to withdraw it. We just need to correct the contact information and get your consent properly documented. I looked at him. Mom closed her eyes. Chloe went still. The real request was finally in the room. You still expect me to do this? Dad spread his hands. Now that you understand the structure, yes, it makes sense. I laughed once. Not because anything was funny. Because sometimes your body needs a sound when your brain has no polite response left. What structure? Chloe can afford the monthly payment. Her issue is qualification. You have qualification capacity. We own the property. Keeping it in the family avoids commissions and uncertainty. Everybody benefits. Everybody? Yes. How do I benefit? You help your sister and protect a family asset. I take on debt on paper. That's where debt lives, Dad. His mouth tightened. Chloe stood. You know what? Forget it. I don't want the house if this is how you're going to treat me. Mom immediately turned toward her. Chloe, nobody said that. I'm serious. She always has to make everything about principle. I looked at my sister. I'm making a mortgage with my name on it about me. You make more money than I do. That has nothing to do with consent. You have perfect credit. You're buying a house. You have savings. You always land on your feet. It was the family biography of me in 5 sentences. Erin is fine. Erin can handle it. Erin has room. Erin has options. Therefore, Erin can absorb the thing nobody else wants to carry. Mom reached for my wrist. I stepped back. Tell me the sale price. Dad answered this time. $312,000. And what do you owe on this place? That's not relevant. It was the first time all evening he refused to answer a number question. That made it the most relevant question in the room. I looked around the townhouse. Paint samples. Congratulations card. Loan estimate with my name on it. My parents were not merely helping Chloe buy something. They were selling her something. And suddenly, I wanted to know why they needed the sale badly enough to use me before asking. I'm leaving the dispute in place, I said. Chloe's face went white. Erin, no, if you want financing, qualify for it honestly. If Mom and Dad want to sell, they can sell. My name is not available. Dad stood. You are making a major financial decision based on emotion. No, I'm making a financial decision because you already made one with my name. I picked up the loan estimate. That stays here, he said. My name is on it. It contains Chloe's private information. I took a photo of the first page instead and put it back down. Then I left. On the drive home, my own pre-approval folder sat on the passenger seat. For the first time, I understood why seeing that photo in the family chat had bothered Chloe. Not because she was jealous, because she had looked at proof that a bank trusted me with $400,000 and seen a resource. The next 3 days became an education in how quickly one family decision could spread into every part of my financial life. North Valley's fraud team asked me for a written statement. My own lender asked for the same. I filed disputes with the credit bureaus. Dana sent the file back through underwriting with an explanation, but the hard inquiry remained visible while the investigation was open. Nicole called again. The seller will give us a 5-day extension, she said. Not more than that. The backup buyer is cash heavy. 5 days beyond the original closing? Yes. I looked at the calendar. 5 extra days sounded generous until I remembered the fraud review was moving on someone else's schedule. That should be enough, right? She did not lie to me. It might be. That evening, Dad emailed me a spreadsheet. Of course he did. Subject line, Chloe purchase, actual numbers. The spreadsheet showed estimated payment, taxes, insurance, and a column labeled Erin exposure with zeros entered beside every month after year 1. At the bottom he had written, Chloe refinance target, 12 to 18 months. Zeros. As if the spreadsheet could decide what a lender would consider my obligation. I called him. You put 0 after year 1. Yes. Why? Because Chloe will refinance. What if she can't? She will. What changes in 12 months? Her income history. What if her income goes down? It won't. What if rates change? We'll deal with it. He sighed. You are looking for reasons this cannot work instead of seeing the obvious way it can. Because none of the downside belongs to you. That is not true. What happens to you if Chloe doesn't buy the townhouse? A pause. There are always options. What options? We could keep renting it to her. Then why don't you? We're trying to simplify. That word. Simplify. My family loved words that made other people's sacrifices sound like efficiencies. What happens if the sale doesn't close? I asked again. Dad's voice cooled. This interrogation is unnecessary. That was the first answer I trusted. I started looking backward. Not dramatically. There was no hidden safe or secret ledger. Just old conversations I had ignored because they had not seemed connected. Dad complaining in March that property taxes on the Oak Park townhouse had jumped again. Mom mentioning they had replaced the roof on their own house using some equity. A conversation in May when Dad said he was tired of carrying 2 properties in this rate environment. Chloe telling me almost proudly that Mom and Dad were going to give her a family price on the townhouse. I had assumed the sale was a gift to Chloe. Now I wondered whether it was an exit for my parents. I called Mom. What do you owe on the townhouse? She went silent. Why are you suddenly obsessed with our finances? Because you attached mine to them. It is not your business what we owe. Then my credit is not your business either. She exhaled. We took a line against the property a few years ago. How much? Your father would know the current number. For what? Life errand, repairs, taxes. Helping Chloe after the divorce. Some things at our house. Is the line becoming a problem? Problem is dramatic. What word would you use? Expensive. That was the pressure I had been looking for. Not catastrophe, not foreclosure, not a secret criminal empire. Expensive. The kind of pressure ordinary people create when they keep a financial arrangement longer than it makes sense, because changing it would require admitting something changed. Did you need Chloe's purchase money to pay it off? That is what happens when you sell property with debt on it. Do you need the sale to close soon? Your father has a plan. That's not an answer. We had hoped to be done before the line changed. What changes? The draw period ends in October, she said. The payment jumps after that. I looked at the calendar. It was late August. So this is not just about Chloe owning her home. Of course it is about Chloe. And you. Families can solve more than one problem at once. The sentence chilled me because it sounded reasonable. That was always Mom's gift. She could turn an ethical question into a scheduling problem. The next morning I asked Chloe to meet me for coffee without Mom and Dad. She refused twice. On the third try I said, I know about the equity line. She showed up 20 minutes early. We sat outside because the coffee shop was too loud inside. Chloe kept her sunglasses on, even though the table was under an awning. How much did they tell you? I asked. They said they wanted to get rid of the home equity line of credit. So you knew. I knew they had debt on the townhouse. That's normal. Did you know they wanted the sale done before the payment jumped? She picked at the paper sleeve around her cup. Yes. When did you know? Before the application. I sat back. So Mom and Dad need the sale. You need financing. And everyone decided my credit was the bridge. No one decided anything without you. I stared at her. You are still saying that? I mean, they were going to ask you. After they pulled my credit. She looked away. What did you think was going to happen when I found out? I thought you'd be angry. Then what? You'd calm down. And you'd see the numbers. I almost smiled. That was Dad speaking through her. Why? Because the numbers work. For whom? For everybody. No, answer it properly. She took off her sunglasses. Her eyes were wet, which made me angry in a new way because I knew part of me would always be susceptible to my sister crying. I can make the payment, she said. I've been paying rent there for 3 years. The mortgage payment would actually be close to what I pay now. I just don't have the history they want because my freelance income was uneven after the divorce. That explains why you need help. It does not explain why you get to use me. I didn't use you. Who first suggested my credit could make this work? She froze. Not long, a fraction of a second, but enough. Mom and Dad were looking at options. That wasn't my question. Why does it matter who said what first? Because you keep telling me they did this to both of us. I never said that. You keep acting like you were just told I agreed. I thought you would. Based on what? She looked down at her coffee. That was when I knew there was more. I did not push harder, not yet. Instead I asked, do you have the messages with Mom and Dad about the loan? She stiffened. Why? Because I want to know what they told you. I'm not handing you my phone. I didn't ask you to. Then what are you asking? Show me the messages where Mom says I agreed. She did not move. Chloe. I don't know what's still in there. You keep everything. That is not true. You still have texts from your college roommate about a toaster. Her mouth tightened. The waiter came to refill our water and sensed enough tension to disappear quickly. Finally, Chloe pulled out her phone. I'll scroll. You don't touch it. Fine. She opened the family thread with Mom and Dad. At first, it was exactly what I expected. Listings. Mortgage calculator screenshots. Dad complaining about rates. Mom saying, we need to keep the payment around what Chloe already handles. Then I saw my name. Mom, Erin's file is stronger. Dad, obviously. Chloe, she got pre-approved for 400. This place is way under that. My eyes stopped there. What date is that? Chloe looked. July 17th. I had posted my pre-approval photo July 16th. I kept reading. Dad, her debt-to-income ratio is low right now. Chloe, would Erin qualify for this amount with me? Dad, almost certainly. Chloe, she'll say no if we ask it, like co-signing. I looked up. Chloe's face had gone completely still. What does that mean? She swallowed. I meant the word sounds worse than the actual arrangement. I read the next message. Mom, then don't make it sound like we're asking her to buy you a house. We're not. Dad, let me talk to Scott first and see what is actually possible. Scott, I assumed, was the broker. Then Chloe. If it's only for qualification and I make every payment, she might do it once it's already laid out. I put my hands flat on the table. For a few seconds, I could hear cars moving on the street behind us and the hiss of the espresso machine through the open door. You suggested me. I suggested an option. You told them I'd say no. I said you might say no if they used the wrong language. That is not better. Erin, please. You knew my answer. I knew your reflex. My reflex? You hear cosign and immediately think you're going to be stuck forever. I knew if Dad showed you the numbers, you'd understand. I stared at my sister. She had not stolen my social security number. She had not filled out the application. She had not created the fake email. But she had looked at proof of my own future and asked whether it could finance hers. Then she helped our parents design the question around the answer she already knew I would give. That was worse than being lied to in a way I had not prepared myself for. Because it meant Chloe had not simply benefited from the betrayal, she had helped imagine it. You were never waiting for me to agree, I said. That's not fair. You were waiting for the deal to become real enough that saying no would cost everyone something. Her eyes filled. It already costs me something. Yes. My rate lock is going to expire. Yes. I might lose the house. Yes. Mom and Dad are going to have to list it. Maybe. And you're okay with that? I thought about the little brick house, my maple tree, the backup offer. No, I said. I'm not okay with any of it. That seemed to confuse her. I leaned forward. You think the only two choices are I sacrifice or I don't care. That is the whole problem. She wiped her cheek angrily. You're going to lose your own house too. The words hit harder than she meant them to. I knew because she flinched after she said it. My phone rang before I could answer. Dana. I looked at the screen, then at Chloe. I need to take this. I walked to the edge of the sidewalk. Dana did not waste time. Underwriting is willing to continue, but they want the fraud review resolved or written confirmation from North Valley that the application was withdrawn as unauthorized. We are not there yet. How much time do we need? I can't tell you. The seller gave 5 days. I know. What if I tell North Valley I'm willing to proceed with the other mortgage? She was silent for half a second. That would create a completely different underwriting problem, because then it becomes a real contingent liability. Erin, I can't advise you on another lender's loan, but if you are asking whether taking on a second mortgage helps your first mortgage close, the answer is generally no. Of course it was no. There was no magic path where I could save both deals by being more cooperative. That mattered. It meant my family's entire plan had depended on something they had never actually tested. That my financial capacity was big enough to absorb whatever they put on it. After the call, Chloe was still at the table. What did she say? That I may lose my house. Her face crumpled. I'm sorry, I believed that she was. It did not make her less responsible. That distinction became important over the next week. Mom called every morning. Dad emailed revised scenarios. Chloe alternated between apology and panic. One family group chat that had been quiet for months suddenly became active after Mom told Aunt Linda that I was refusing to help Chloe complete a purchase everyone had already planned around. Linda texted me privately. Your mother says this is temporary. Is there a reason you can't help for a year? I replied with one sentence. Because I did not agree to be on the loan. She did not text again. I stopped trying to win the family narrative. That was another habit my mother had trained into us. If someone misunderstood you, explain harder. If they still misunderstood, explain with more detail. If they were still angry, maybe your explanation had not been kind enough. I did not have time for that anymore. Every morning, the seller's final deadline moved closer, while the fraud review stayed open. North Valley confirmed the application was on hold pending identity review, but would not immediately delete the inquiry. My credit bureaus added fraud alerts. My own lender requested another credit supplement. 2 days before the seller's final deadline, Dad called me. "Come over tonight." "No. Erin, this has moved beyond family feelings. There are financial consequences now. Yes. For all of us. Yes. You keep saying yes as if that makes your position reasonable. It makes it accurate." He exhaled hard. "Your mother and I have decided we can reduce the sale price." That does not change my answer. It could reduce the loan enough that Chloe qualifies without you. That got my attention. "How much?" $28,000. "Then do that." It would wipe out most of the equity we expected after paying the line. I waited. He waited too. The real question beneath all the others was finally visible. Who absorbs the cost? "Then that is your decision," I said. "You're missing the point." "No, I finally understand it. If you stayed on the loan for 12 months, nobody has to lose anything. I lose borrowing capacity. You already have your house under contract. I may lose it because of this. You probably won't. That is not yours to gamble. Erin, you are financially stronger than Chloe and us combined right now. The sentence hung between us. Not richer. Not safer. Stronger, as if strength were a public utility. And that makes my answer less important. No, it means your help has more impact. Then you should have asked for it. We knew what you would say." I went still. Dad seemed to realize what he had admitted, but he did not take it back. "You knew I would say no. We knew you would react to the word co-borrower." Chloe said the same thing. "Because we know you." "No, because you knew my boundary." He said my name in the tired voice parents use when they think a child is being deliberately difficult. I cut him off. "You did not misunderstand me. You designed around me." Silence. For the first time since this started, he had no spreadsheet answer. The next day, Nicole called. "The seller is going with the backup offer if we cannot clear financing by tomorrow at noon." I stood at my office window and watched people cross the street 12 floors below. "Is there anything else we can do?" "We can ask for another extension, but they already said no. They have a backup buyer who can close quickly." I closed my eyes. I had not moved into the little brick house. I had not planted anything under the maple tree. I had not spent Christmas there or fixed a leaking faucet or painted the bedroom. Still, grief does not need ownership documents. Sometimes it only needs a future you had started believing in. "Ask one more time," I said. "I will." At 11 the next morning, the answer was no. My contract terminated at noon. Nicole emailed the termination paperwork first, then called because she knew I would read the attachment before I answered. I signed from my desk with the pre-approval folder open beside me. The contractor's water heater estimate was still tucked inside, folded into thirds exactly where I had put it after that last visit. I pulled it out and stared at the number in the bottom corner. $860. 3 days earlier, that had been a future inconvenience I was preparing to own. Now it belonged to somebody else. I slid the estimate into the recycling bin, then took it back out because the motion felt too much like pretending I did not care. I folded it once more and put it in the back of the folder, not as evidence against anyone. Just because I was not ready for the house to disappear as quickly as the contract had. The seller returned my earnest money because the financing contingency still protected me. I lost the inspection fee, the appraisal fee, the rate lock in the house. I sat in my car outside work with both hands on the steering wheel. The pre-approval folder lay on the passenger seat, thicker than it had any right to feel. I did not cry immediately. I was too angry for that. Then I saw the photo of the kitchen, still saved in my favorites, and cried so hard I had to lean forward until my forehead touched the wheel. For 20 minutes, I hated my parents. For another 10, I hated Chloe. Then, because anger is not nearly as clean in real life as it is in stories, I hated myself for posting the pre-approval photo, for letting Dad keep my tax returns, for thinking competence protected me from being used. That part lasted until I understood the obvious. They had information because I trusted them. Trust was not consent either. I went back upstairs. At 3 that afternoon, North Valley called. The unauthorized application would be closed. Their fraud team would send written confirmation. They recommended I keep the credit freezes in place and submit identity theft documentation if I wanted additional corrections. I thanked them. Then I called Dad. "The application is closed." He said nothing. "My house is gone. I'm sorry." His voice sounded smaller than I expected. "I want every tax return, copy of my social security card, employment record, old pay stub, and financial document you have for me. Erin, put them in a box. I will pick them up Saturday. You think I'm going to steal from you now? I think you already used information you had because you decided your reason was good enough. That is not theft. I'm not arguing vocabulary with you. You are destroying trust over one mistake. No, I'm changing access because of one decision. That is the same thing. It isn't. On Saturday, Mom opened the door before I knocked. There was a banker's box in the foyer. My name was written across the top in Dad's block letters. For 15 years, that handwriting had meant someone else was taking care of something for me. Now it looked like evidence of how long I had outsourced pieces of my own life. Mom folded her arms. Your father barely slept last night. I'm sorry he's upset. That's it? What would you like me to do? Talk to him like he's your father, not some stranger who stole your wallet. I did talk to him like my father. That was part of the problem. I kept assuming being my father meant he would not use my information without asking. She looked wounded. We were trying to keep the townhouse in the family and get rid of the debt on it. We are allowed to make financial decisions with your finances. Erin, it would have worked. I looked at her. That was the saddest part. She still believed that was the relevant standard. Mom, if I secretly put your name on a loan and later proved I could make every payment, would that make it okay? That is different. How? We are your parents, so that was the rule. Not a financial argument, not a paperwork argument, authority. The old version of authority, preserved long after the child became an adult. I lifted the box. It's not different anymore. Dad came out of his office. He looked older than he had 2 weeks earlier. Wait, he said. I stopped. He held an envelope. What's that? A copy of the correspondence with Scott. The broker? He nodded. I thought you should have it. Mom turned sharply. Tom. She is going to get it eventually if she pushes this, he said. Better she hears it from us. I put the box down. Dad handed me the envelope. Inside were printed emails. Most were boring. Loan scenarios, property value, estimated debt ratios. Then one caught my attention. Scott had written, the initial borrower authorization shows as completed, but before I submit this file to underwriting, I need to speak with Erin directly. Her credit shows another home purchase in process. Please have her call me from the number listed on the application. Dad replied, she is traveling and asked us to help organize the file. We want to know whether the numbers work before we drag her through another round of paperwork. Then a second email, 3 days later. Based on the initial credit and application data, the numbers may work, but her concurrent home purchase is an issue. If that purchase closes first, the ratios may change. I will not submit this to underwriting until I verify the structure directly with Erin. I read that twice. My father had known. He had known my own mortgage could conflict with Chloe's, and he had proceeded far enough for a hard inquiry anyway. I looked up. You knew this could affect my house. Dad's shoulders dropped. I knew there could be a timing issue. Why did you keep going? Because we thought once you saw the plan, you'd work with us on timing. Meaning what? If necessary, you could delay your closing a few weeks. The room became very quiet. Mom looked away. She had already asked me to delay my closing once the problem surfaced. What changed now was the timing. Dad had known my purchase could conflict with Chloe's before I ever discovered the application. You were willing to risk my house before asking me. No, that is exactly what that says. We thought your seller would extend. They didn't, I know. You thought mine was flexible because Chloe's was important. That's not what I said. You didn't have to say it. He sat on the edge of the hallway bench. For once, Dad did not defend the math. That was when the full shape of it became clear. My parents had not believed my answer did not matter. They believed my answer could be managed after enough facts were already in motion. Chloe wanted the townhouse. They wanted the debt gone. I wanted my own house. And because I was the person with the strongest credit and the fewest visible emergencies, mine was the plan they assumed could bend. I picked up the box again. What are you going to do with Oak Park? I asked. Dad rubbed his face. List it probably. What about Chloe? She can keep renting while we decide. Mom shook her head. We cannot keep carrying it indefinitely. Then sell it. To strangers? She asked, as if that were indecent. Yes, that means Chloe has to move. Maybe. You can say that so easily. No. I can say it because it is true. You could still help. There was no accusation in her voice anymore. Almost worse. A request. The real request, finally spoken after everything else had failed. I looked at my mother. No. She flinched. It's not just my credit, I said. It's my future decisions. You don't get to spend them because I have more of them available. Dad stared at the floor. Mom said, so that's it for the loan, yes. For us, I adjusted the box against my hip. That depends on whether you can have a relationship with me where access is not automatic. I left before anyone could turn that into a debate. Chloe came to my apartment that night. She had texted first. That detail mattered. When I opened the door, she was holding a thin folder. I brought everything I have with your information on it, she said. I let her in. We sat at my kitchen table. She pushed the folder toward me. There were copies of the loan estimate, a printout of my pre-approval screenshot, and one page Dad had given her showing my approximate debt ratio beside hers. I looked at it. You kept this? I was trying to understand why they thought it would work. That's not the question. I know. She looked down. I should have called you the second they started talking about your credit. Yes. I should have called before Dad talked to the broker. Yes. I knew you had not agreed. Yes, she swallowed. I'm sorry I did not tell her it was okay, it was not. But I believed the apology because she did not put anything after it. No but, no, Mom said. No, you have more. No temporary. Just the sentence. I'm going to move, she said. What about buying the townhouse? I can't without you unless Mom and Dad cut the price enough to hurt themselves. Dad already asked if I could come up with another 20 grand for the down payment. I can't. What are you going to do? Rent something smaller. Maybe try again next year. I nodded. She wiped her palms on her jeans. Are you going to buy another house? Eventually. I'm sorry about the one you lost. That one hurt. I looked away. So am I. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, I really did think because you could qualify for more, this wouldn't matter as much to you. I looked back at her. That is probably the most honest thing anyone has said. I know it sounds terrible. It sounds like what happened. She nodded. I think Mom and Dad trained us to think that way. I almost corrected her, then stopped. Maybe they had. But Chloe had still made choices inside that training. So had I. I'm not interested in deciding who trained who, I said. I'm interested in what happens next. What happens next? If someone tells you I agreed to something, you ask me. Okay. If you want something from me, you ask me. Okay. If the answer is no, you don't help somebody else find a better way to phrase the question. Her mouth tightened. Okay. And I don't discuss my credit, salary, pre-approval, savings, taxes, or financial capacity in the family chat anymore. A tiny, embarrassed smile appeared. Probably smart. Very. She stayed for an hour. We did not fix 30 years of family dynamics. We talked about practical things. Her lease options, my credit dispute. How to move Mom and Dad off every account where they were emergency contacts or document holders. That was enough. 2 weeks later, North Valley sent final confirmation that the unauthorized application was closed. The fraudulent inquiry disappeared after the disputes and documentation worked their way through. My credit file stabilized, but the house was gone. My parents listed the townhouse in October, not because I forced them. Because the home equity line of credit's draw period ended, the monthly payment increased, and the math Dad had tried to move on to me finally stayed where it belonged. Chloe rented a smaller 2-bedroom 6 blocks away. She complained about the closets and handled every page of the lease herself. My parents sold the townhouse to a couple I never met. The sale price was lower than Dad had wanted and higher than Mom had feared. They paid off the line. There was no dramatic collapse. No one lost everything. They simply had less equity left than they had planned to preserve by using me. That was consequence enough. In January, I applied for another mortgage. Different house, different lender, smaller backyard, no maple tree. I liked it less immediately, which turned out to be useful because I could think clearly during inspection. The loan officer slid a folder across her desk at our first meeting. Before we start, she said, I need to confirm that every application, document, and authorization in this file is coming directly from you. The question was routine. For her, I put my hand on the folder. Yes, it was the first mortgage document in months that felt light. Not because the obligation was small, because it was mine.